Imagine someone in your life who constantly makes promises, but they rarely keep them. I mean, they promise they'll call, then they don't. They promise they'll show up, they don't. They promise next time will be different. Eventually, you stop believing their words. And not because they're a bad person, but because their actions have taught you what to expect. You no longer trust their words. In your eyes, they lack integrity. Now, let me ask you a harder question. If someone treated you the way you treat your own commitments, would you trust them? That's a difficult question because many of us make promises to ourselves almost every day. I'll start tomorrow. I'll be more patient. I'll finally finish what I started. And then life gets busy. Our feelings change. And then the promise quietly disappears. And at first, it doesn't seem like a big deal. But every broken promise teaches your mind something. Maybe my word doesn't really matter. And that's why honoring your commitments isn't about just reaching goals. It's about rebuilding trust with the one person that you'll spend your entire life with, yourself. Every promise you keep lays another stone in the foundation of your character. Every promise you abandon removes one. Over time, you build a foundation that's either strong enough to support the life that you want, or it's fragile enough that every challenge begins to crack it. That's why commitment isn't the finish line. Keeping your commitment is. Here's something that I've come to believe: self trust isn't built by making bigger promises, it's built by keeping smaller ones. We often think transformation begins with one massive decision, a complete life overhaul, a dramatic announcement, a perfect new routine. But foundations aren't built that way. They're built one stone at a time, one promise, one action, repeated until something strong begins to emerge. And that's why I encourage people to make fewer promises, not more, but fewer. Every promise carries weight. Every commitment creates an opportunity to strengthen that trust or weaken it. I've noticed that people who consistently finish what they start usually share one characteristic. They don't rely on excitement, they rely on integrity. There's a difference because excitement says, I'll do it because I feel inspired. Integrity says, I'll do it because I gave my word. That's a completely different relationship with yourself. It changes the way that you approach everything, really. I've also realized that every promise creates two conversations. There's the one you have before you begin, and then there's the one you have after you've either honored it, your commitment, or abandoned it. When you keep your promise, your mind quietly says, I can trust myself. But when you don't, it says, maybe next time doesn't really mean next time. Almost like your mind will ask, maybe I don't need to take it serious or take him serious or her serious at this point because she maybe or she may not honor her word. And those conversations matter because they become expectations. And eventually you stop acting according to what you hope you'll do and you begin acting according to what you've trained yourself to accept. And that's why consistency is so powerful. Every kept promise raises your expectations of yourself. And not in an unhealthy way, but more or less in a trustworthy way. You begin believing that your future actions will match your present intentions. That's a remarkable kind of freedom because once self trust begins to grow, discipline feels less like force and more like identity. And you're no longer trying to become someone dependable. You're simply acting like the person that you have become. That's someone who is dependable. That's what honoring your commitments really accomplishes. It doesn't just complete today's task, it quietly reshapes tomorrow's identity. And there's another misunderstanding about honoring commitments. Many people think the biggest danger is failure. I don't think that's the case. I think the bigger danger is becoming comfortable with breaking your own word. The first broken promise usually bothers you, but by the time we get to the 10th one, it usually doesn't. And that's how inconsistency becomes normal. It's not all at once, it's little by little. One exception, one excuse, one postponed commitment after another. And then eventually, you stop expecting yourself to follow through. And that's why honoring your commitments isn't really about today's action, it's about protecting tomorrow's identity. Every promise you keep is evidence that your word means something, evidence that your values are stronger than your emotions, evidence that the person that you're becoming is someone you can depend on. I've also noticed something about people with strong character. They don't make excuses when life becomes inconvenient. They make adjustments. If they can't do an hour, they do 15 minutes. If they can't finish everything, they complete the next meaningful step. And why do they do that? Because they're protecting something more important than today's progress. They're protecting their relationship with themselves. The foundation matters more than the speed of construction. When you think about building a house, missing one day of work doesn't destroy the foundation. Walking away from the project does. The same is true for your commitments. One imperfect day isn't the problem, quitting is. And that's why I believe consistency is less about perfection and more about returning. Returning to the promise, returning to your values, returning to the person that you've decided to become. Every return layers another stone in that foundation. Every kept promise makes the foundation stronger. Eventually, that foundation becomes strong enough to support the challenges that would have once caused you to give up. Not because life became easier, but because you became more dependable. And dependable people don't trust their moods, they trust their commitments. So, what does honoring your commitments look like in everyday life? It begins with one simple decision. Stop measuring yourself by what you intend to do and start measuring yourself by what you consistently do. Intentions are important, but intentions don't build foundations. Actions do. Choose one promise that you've already made to yourself, not a new one you've already decided that it really matters, and then honor that today. Even if it's inconvenient, even if progress feels small, even if no one else will ever know, because someone will know. You will. I found another practice that quietly changed the way that I think about consistency. At the end of the day, don't ask, did I accomplish everything? I ask, did I keep my word? Sometimes the answer is yes. And even when the day didn't go as planned, I can say yes. Sometimes the answer is no. When that happens, I don't create another promise. I return to the original one. And that's an important distinction. Instead of piling failed promises on top of each other, go back to what you decided that you were going to do and then make another attempt at honoring that thing. Strong foundations aren't built by constantly changing the blueprint, they're built by continuing the work. That's today's daily focus. Choose one promise that you've already made to yourself. Honor it today. And don't do this because someone's watching, not because you receive some type of recognition, but because every kept promise teaches your mind one simple truth: my word matters. Think back to the image that we've carried throughout this lesson, the foundation. Nobody celebrates a foundation. Most people never even see it, but every beautiful home depends on it. And character works the same way. The strongest parts of who you become are often invisible. The promises you kept when quitting would have been easier, the habits you honored when no one was watching, the quiet moments when you chose integrity over convenience. Those moments don't usually make the headlines, but they'll make lives that can withstand storms. So tomorrow morning, don't ask yourself what you hope to accomplish. Ask yourself what promise deserves to be honored today, and then keep it. One promise, one stone, one day at a time. Because the foundation that you're building isn't just supporting your next goal, it's supporting the person that you're becoming. And remember, every promise you keep with yourself becomes evidence that you can be trusted. Imagine yourself 5 years from now. Someone asks, what's the biggest difference between who you were and who you are today? I don't think your answer will begin with talent or luck or even opportunity. I think it will begin with trust. Not the trust other people placed in you, but the trust that you built with yourself. Because every time you honored your word, you cast a vote for the person that you're becoming. One promise, one direction, one ordinary day at a time. That's how character is built. Not through one dramatic moment, but through thousands of quiet ones. Think about the journey that we've taken through this phase. You made a commitment. Then you learned that the commitment itself wasn't enough. The real transformation came from honoring it again and again and again. That's the difference between wishing for a different life and becoming the kind of person who can build one. Because goals may inspire you, commitments may direct you, but integrity is what sustains you. Integrity is simply the habit of making your actions agree with your values. And when those two begin working together, life becomes much quieter. There's less internal negotiation, less guilt, less second guessing, because you've learned something incredibly valuable. The word means something, especially to you. So tomorrow, don't make another promise. Keep one you've already made. Strengthen one more stone in the foundation. Become just a little more dependable than you were yesterday. Because extraordinary lives are rarely built by extraordinary people. They're built by ordinary people who repeatedly do what they said that they would do. And eventually, those repeated promises become an unshakable foundation, one that can support your dreams and your relationships and your purpose and every future commitment that you choose to make. Because once you learn to trust yourself, everything else becomes easier to build. And remember, every promise you keep with yourself becomes evidence that you can be trusted. Today's daily focus: choose one promise you've already made to yourself, honor it today, no matter how small. Let today's action become another stone in the foundation of your character. And here's a memorable principle: every promise you keep with yourself becomes evidence that you can be trusted.